let's talk more about Game 7. A Minnesota Timberwolves win the first time in 20 years, Brendon, that the Wolves are in the conference finals, and they beat Nikola Jokic, the best player alive, the multiple-time MVP, the defending NBA champions, and did it, again, disastrous first half. No team that had been down more than 11 after the first half has ever come back, and the Wolves blew that out of the water.
38 points scored in the first half total. 38. I feel like the Pacers had that in the first 6 minutes.
They might have had it. They felt like they had it in the first 2 minutes, honestly. Which when we get to the Pacers Knicks games, I'm going to make a point about that struck me when I was watching this game. But this was also a game where it wasn't even like an Anthony Edwards dominates a Game 7 game. Anthony Edwards finished 6 of 24 in this game. And Brendon, if you had told me the Wolves were going to win and come back this way, and it wasn't going to be an Anthony Edwards dominates game, I think I would have told you I don't know how that's going to happen. And yet it did. And shout out to the Timberwolves who are here, who are real, who are as every bit a title contender who is real, who earned this. This was awesome. They delivered. If this isn't the biggest moment in their franchise history, it's one of the top 5. Top 3.
Absolutely. I mean, this is only their second conference finals, I believe, right? So it's as big as anything. And look, I hear you on Anthony Edwards. Of course, he's been the star, but I almost feel like this did make sense to me. Now, going down 20, I wouldn't have projected in there. But just if you were to say they won and they won this way, I would have believed you because we've already seen in this postseason, Ant had a 15-point Game 2 in the first round. He had 19 in Game 3 this round. They lost that game. And 18 in Game 4 or Game 5. They did lose that game. But they've been able to be competitive and stay afloat without his best. And I almost think this Wolves win was kind of perfect in that way where they come back with their defense, right? Like it was pretty quick. They were down 20 at one point in the third quarter, but it wasn't like a 12-0 run. It was pretty chipping away, mostly by getting stops. You get a little Karl Anthony Towns here. You get a little Jaden McDaniels in the first half there. Conley hits some timely buckets, especially from deep, if not a huge night from him. You get the Naz Reid explosion to close the game that we'll get to. I'm sure.
If that guy's doing tattoos, I might need to fly back to Minnesota to get a $20 Naz Reid tattoo in my forearm after some of the stuff he did in this game.
The price just went up, I think. The price just went up. But then, right, like it's extra Wolvesy because their warts showed up here too. You had Karl Anthony Towns get his 5th foul with about 6 minutes to go, has to hit the bench. And you're like, damn, I mean, obviously Naz Reid is great. He's the 6th man of the year. He's had some nice moments in this series, but this is happening. It's imploding. It's Cat on the bench with foul trouble in the biggest moment of their season, of this era. Was that the last play he's ever going to be on the court for Minnesota? And then their depth, their intensity, and their kind of collective spirit is what ends up winning out. I thought it was cool that it happened that way, although, of course, yes. If you had told me Ant was going to be this bad from the field, I probably would have agreed that it would have gotten ugly. But, hey, it did get ugly, and then they actually just figured it out. So, yeah, I mean, them being deeper. I have to throw a little bit of a brag in here, though. I told you guys via text, and I said it in the last show.
You were right.
In this matchup, Minnesota, when they are playing their best, they are better than this version of Denver's best. And I think we saw that in the second half.
I 100% agree. And I think the point about energy, Brendon, and having a gas tank, I think that showed out here in a big way. I think that's one of the stories of this game to me. Number one, I want to just put some more. I'm taking this cue from you, big picture, but Rudy Gobert might be the most conditioned player in the NBA. That guy just never stopped going. I know he fouled out. I know kind of a quiet game from him, but that guy's always kind of there. The whole Wolves team, Anthony Edwards on down, is flying around this game the entire time. My favorite play of this game is a block on Jokic late in the fourth quarter. 3 Wolves, who are probably all to some degrees exhausted, find the energy to go meet Jokic at the rim. I think it was Naz, Jaden. I don't know who the third guy was, but they all meet Jokic at the rim, and they kickstart a fast break. I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. 3 guys just went and met Jokic at the rim. For 3 guys to do that late in the game speaks to this Wolves team. By comparison, it felt like Denver like, yes, on their bench, Christian Brown's the only bench guy that played double-digit minutes. Reggie Jackson plays 5. Holiday plays 9. And it felt like the strategy they used in the first half, particularly defensively, where they blitzed Ant. Jokic is coming up well beyond the level and kind of like soft trapping Ant. They're throwing and they're rotating. They're almost like they're rotating all around. Everyone has to move everywhere to keep Ant in check and make him give up the ball and then make it hard for him to get back the ball and attack on the weak side. It felt like with the heavy minutes they asked their main guys to play on top of that strategy, it burned them out. And the Wolves didn't burn out in the same way. It is too simplistic to just base the game on that. But to me, that opened the door in the second half for what the Wolves did. Because of who the Wolves are, the way Denver had to burn themselves in the first half, and a strategy that really worked, it left them vulnerable, I think, in the second half of this game.
Yeah, I think that's a good read on it. I mean, you give credit to Minnesota, not just for the comeback, and obviously that was historic, like you said, but I think they almost do deserve some credit for not letting this get out of hand in a series where we saw a 26-point game, a 27-point game, a 15-point loss, and then, of course, they had a 45-point win in there. This has been such a lopsided series where that first punch has meant so much that I'm impressed that, they cut it to 10 midway through the second quarter on a couple of Cat made a 3, and then he made a fadeaway jumper in the post over some kind of mismatch. Might have been Murray. They cut it to 10. Mm-hmm. He starts the second half missing 3 straight. Ant front rim to 3, and then airball the mid-range jumper back to back. But then right away, Ant gets a transition layup, cuts the lead to 12. Then you did start to see the legs wear down. Murray had 4 straight misses at one point in the middle of the third quarter, which is when Minnesota started to make their comeback. They go on a 9-0 run, leads down to 6. You saw a Jokic turnover shortly thereafter, and then the wheels started to come off. So they kept it within striking distance with some timely buckets in that first half, even though it did look ugly. And then again, You're right, they were ready to kind of hit it. Jokic played more minutes tonight than he has in any regulation playoff game ever. And I know that's a game 7. I understand the difference, but still, 46. I doubt that was the plan. I doubt that's what they were hoping he would have to play, but they just don't trust their guys. They haven't all series, really.
No, and I think for as much as you could look at the way they built this roster this year and think about the way they intentionally built it with older rookies and stuff, there's a certain point where it's clearly Michael Malone just didn't trust these guys. They weren't Hunter Tyson and Zeke Najee's never been a thing. Peyton Watson never got off the floor in these playoffs. Straw weather never mattered this year at all. These guys just never mattered, and that bit them in some way. That those guys didn't work out, and then some of the fringe guys for Nikhil Alexander Walker.
And that Minnesota's a good enough opponent that that mattered, right? Because last year, Jeff Green kind of sucked. Frankly, he was playing, but he wasn't awesome, but they didn't really run into anybody who made them have to pay for that, whereas this opponent very quickly was we're really in it.
And then on top of that, it feels like Gordon, Porter, and I think most notably KCP all a hedge worse. KCP, a 0 in these playoffs on offense. KCP, battled on defense, doing what he needed to do on that end, but not spacing the floor at all. Not any, the ball gets swung his way, you feel like he's going to miss. Porter Jr., the quick triggers there, but 3 of 12 in this game, 1 of 6 from 3. Aaron Gordon, 2 of 5. And Aaron Gordon committing some dumb fouls in this game as well. Just mindless fouls. I expect better out of Aaron Gordon. When those guys, who are the other heavy minutes guys, aren't giving you anything, the margin for error for Jokic, who some of the threes he's taking, just no lift on them.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say, actually. Because, you look at it Christian Brown, 24% from deep in the playoffs heading into tonight. He's 0 of 1. Justin Holiday, 38. Reggie Jackson, 35. They don't even get any up today. But we've talked plenty about Murray's poor performance at various points. He showed up for the team tonight. But I noticed the Jokic tiredness, and it's unfair to maybe say he's been tired the whole postseason, but he had 15 rebounds in the first half and 4 in the second half. And to me, that is another example of some of the defensive energy stuff you were talking about, where it's like they had that first punch. They didn't have the combo after that. And then the threes, 2 of 10. And if we're talking about all these ways that the Nuggets were a touch worse, he's been money from three, not just last postseason, but forever in his career. He's always brought it, made more shots from back there for whatever reason in the playoffs versus the regular season. That just did not happen in this run. So 28% heading into tonight, 2 of 10. He's probably going to finish around 25%. Like, it's not good enough. Even though he's been heroic in so many other ways, like, you can't miss those shots against a defense that's giving them to you and expect to win.
No, not at all. 2 stats, Brendon, I want to hit you with from this game. Number 1, this is the first time in the series the Wolves lost the points in the paint battle and won the game. That's interesting. Number 2, Nuggets, I believe it's now 0-12 on the year when they scored under 100 points. And I think it's 6 times. It's either 6 or 7. I might have the number wrong. I don't have it exactly in front of me right now. But they've been held under 100 points. 6 of those times out of the 12 are by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Shout out Tim Conley, who did the damn thing in building a team to defeat the Denver Nuggets. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
unbelievable stuff.
For sure, and being able to play their game and still beat them, I think, is huge, right? Because many teams are so out of their comfort zone, just stylistically, pace-wise, half court versus full court, low 3-point totals because the Nuggets don't take a lot, they don't let you take a lot, all these other things. Rebounding, Minnesota's obviously more than capable of matching that as they did tonight, but we don't know what Minnesota's going to do. Obviously, yet. They're in the conference finals. We'll see where they go from there. But I think what's so cool about this is, and it comes back to your original point about how they were able to win in spite of Ant not playing his best. This is 2 teams now that have dominated a postseason and kind of announced themselves. Denver last year, now Minnesota by beating them this year, that are so antithetical to what we thought was like supposed to be able to win in 2024 in the NBA, right? Like last year with the Nuggets, it's like they're a mediocre defense. They don't really have like a cream of the crop perimeter creator on the wing, which is kind of like what we've all been thinking you had to have, from LeBron to KD to whatever, Kawhi. They didn't have that. Their center's not a great athlete. All these things, including the stylistic stuff I just mentioned, and yet they just bomb through the playoffs and win a title. The Wolves, it's like they are young, obviously, but they're really big in the front court, 2 bigs, building around a guard that's not like the elite of the elite shooter. You know, it's not Steph. Steph's really the only small guard who's been able to dominate the NBA since Jordan. I mean, like Kobe, I guess, but he's kind of a wing. Like, to be able to roster-wise and experience-wise and style-wise do this, and frankly, just to be built around defense at all, Chris, like that's something we thought was over. And this Wolves team is just so cool in so many ways because they're just something we thought was just done, and that's why I don't think anybody believed in them literally going into like the second half tonight. It was all the way through there before anyone said they could do it.
All 3 hosts on our show picked the Phoenix Suns for one.
Yeah,
like we all picked against,
everybody
you know
did.
what I mean? Yeah, and like think here's the teams with the best defenses in the league this year, Brendon. Top 10: Orlando, Sacramento, Oklahoma City, Boston, Minnesota. This isn't the playoffs. I'm gonna fix this. Cleaning the glass. I want to look at regular season. I understand why they did that, but L for me by not checking the filters.
It is the worst this time of year. Cleaning the glass sorts everything by postseason, even when you're like 6 layers deep of a stat and you're like, why would I only be wanting to see like 16 teams of this? Come on. Help me out here.
Okay. Regular season defense: Minnesota, Orlando, Boston, OKC, Miami, Cleveland, Houston, New Orleans, Denver, New York, Philly. 2 of those teams are left in the playoffs. It is an anomaly that defensive teams maybe it isn't an anomaly anymore that these 2 teams with elite defenses are now making playoff runs. And maybe we're in a world where defense is this different thing, and the offense is obviously a different thing. Like Minnesota's we kind of have a test case here where Minnesota's offense was their whole concern. They're league average. Boston obviously first in offense. They play totally different contrasting styles and intentions, and their stars play very different ways and have very different attitudes. But it's cool that, to your point, that we're getting these very different realities of how teams are approaching, and none of this looks the same. I mean, none of the teams left play the same, want to play the same. It's ideologically all over the place. The Final Four of the NBA this year is all over the place. The Wolves are unique in their own way, and they're kind of the best example of the state of the league, I think, in that way.
If we do get Milwaukee, Minnesota, and Boston, that'll be about as clash of styles as you possibly could get. I mean, no bigs, basically no real people who play like centers, and 2 centers, sometimes 3. Yeah. I mean, the Wolves played Reed, Towns, and Gobert together in this game in the second quarter, and they do that sometimes. So it should be a blast. But I think that's a great jumping off point to Dallas because they seem like the forgotten team here a little bit.
I just want to say the last thing I'll say about Nuggets Wolves. I know Knicks Sixers was like the 1-point series. I understand there were some blowouts in this Nuggets Wolves series that made some of the games not as competitive. That was my favorite series of the playoffs so far, and it's not close.
Oh yeah. No,
I just want to be on the
Knicks
record.
Sixers, it's like first round, everybody's hurt, and Embiid, the whole Sixers drama. No, this was the level of basketball was far and away better, and I think we could be in for another pretty fun one in Minnesota Dallas.